Now the way that would work is they started digging a hole. Now, not just any hole. I mean, this was very, very large hole, and as they dug this hole, they continued to dig down, they continued to dig out. That hole got so large, it was more than a mile long and more than half a mile wide, almost 1,000 feet deep. At one point in 1952, the hole got so big it came right up to the edge of town. The company decided, we'll move the town. Because they owned the company, the company owned those homes, they could do that. So they picked up all the homes, they moved them about 2 miles and continued to mine. Now you can imagine this hole that just got larger and larger and larger until it was one of the largest single holes in the world. Now that's where you dig the copper up. Once you have copper ore, you still need to turn it into copper. And that's what the railroad was here for. Mark Requa, in his vision was, yes, you can produce copper, but you still have to get it out. And so the Nevada Northern was used heavily in the mining, in the digging of that hole. In fact, at one point in time, there was 14 miles of concentric track inside that hole that spiraled to the bottom. So once you've dug all that out, you haul that 14-mile track back up, loaded with copper ore, and then it would pass right through here, right through the Nevada Northern Yard, on its way to McGill. And McGill would be the smelting center for eastern Nevada. Now it was huge. The one thing that you did here in eastern Nevada was mine copper on a bigger scale than they'd ever tried. We used steam shovels here that were the same pieces of equipment, or at least the same models and makes, made by the same people that dug the Panama Canal in the early part of the last century. So these were very, very large, and technology was always being tested here. The bigger shovels would be invented, and then they bring it here to try it out. If it would work here, it would probably work anywhere. Huge copper shovels. We had at the time that they closed, we have copper shovels that they've driven a pickup truck in to show you the size of this. And there's a pickup truck sitting inside the scoop of the shovel. You can imagine how fast you can dig up this mine with this shovel. Historically, what they would do, Gwen, would be take ore cars inside the pit, and they would load those and then bring out the string of ore cars and then string a number of those together and then make the train. The train would generally be 30 ore cars that would leave Ruth in the mining area and then would come through Ely on its way to McGill. Now, one locomotive could pull 30 ore cars, and that was a standard size train. Once it got to McGill, it would be smelted, it would be turned into what was called blister copper, and it would be sent from McGill via rail 140 miles north, straight up Steptoe Valley. And that 140 miles tied you in with the mainline railroads. The original transcontinental railroad that came across Nevada in 1869, we tie into that. The Western Pacific and Southern Pacific, by the time this railroad was completed, both lie north of us by about 120 and 140 miles. We tie into both of those railroads. So we become a short line railroad. We connected the mine to the mainline railroad, and that's how the copper ore would be turned into wire, or be turned into copper at the town of McGill, and then from there it would go out to the country to provide the light for America.
So practically overnight, Ely turned from a tiny, sleepy little town.
Probably a little smaller than tiny. Yeah, we were very, very small, but became a place of major importance in the United States because of the copper we were producing.
So Ely, in a very real way, was lighting up America.
We lit America.
Must have been a real proud time for people here.
It was. It was a huge operation, lots of people involved in that, but yeah, huge.
Next, we'll follow the process up to McGill, where all this copper was smelted down. Well, we've made it now to McGill, and we're sitting in the McGill drugstore. And Sean, this was the drugstore in the town of McGill that's been here for a long time.
Absolutely. This was the drugstore in the town of McGill from 1908, when McGill was first a town, clear up until when this drugstore closed in the late 1970s, and was still open periodically to purchase things through the mid-1980s, and is still open today for you to come get an ice cream cone or root beer float. And there's a museum today to see what it was like all those years ago here in the town of McGill.
So you really get a sense coming in this drugstore that it's the real thing, and there's pieces from different points in time.
Incredible. Walk around, take a look at the shelves and what's on the shelves, and things from the 1920s are still on the shelves here. And this was the only drugstore in the town of McGill. Interesting thing about this town is it was the quintessential company town in America. The company ran this town. The company ran everything about this town, and you did not operate a business here without the company say so. And so this drugstore was one of the universal needs of all of humanity. You want to stay healthy. And so it was this place and the post office just across the street that everyone was welcome all the time. Now, unfortunately, that wasn't always the case in this town. We have different bars or taverns in this town. One bar was exclusively the Anglo-Saxon bar. That's where you hung out if you were Anglo-Saxon. That's where you went to drink. That's where you went to while away your hours after work. We also have a bar on the far end of town that was where Slovakian people of Eastern European descent, they would go hang out there. They didn't always mix. They didn't always meet. McGill, according to Russ Elliott, great historian who's actually from this town, says McGill is not the American melting pot, more like the American salad bar, with pockets of ethnicity, all of them in the same general area, and all of them together make up a better salad than any one of them, but very much to themselves. It was possible to live in the town of McGill and never learn to speak English.
Amazing.
Amazing.
And everyone was here, though, for the same purpose, which was because of the smelter.
All here to work, and this was the end result. This is where the copper was actually produced, was here from the town of McGill. This was the big place. This was where the majority of the company workers came to work. And the reason for that was it required a huge man force, a huge amount of manpower and labor to get the copper from the ore that was mined, brought up here by the railroad, and then turned into copper. The smelter was huge. At one time, McGill, Nevada, was the largest single town in White Pine County. 2,800 people lived here. It was far larger than Ely, far larger than Ruth, in the places that we've been. Now, the smelter was just up here on the east side of town. We produced here what was called blister copper. Blister copper is about 97% pure copper. Now, it comes out in a number of different forms. It comes out molten hot. You make it whatever form you want. Originally, they came in ingots, about 300 pounds of blister copper, 97% pure copper. By the time they were through operating here, they went to a cake of copper, it was called. A cake of copper is about the size of a desk. 3 tons of 9,000 pounds, or roughly 9,000 pounds, 6 to 9,000 depending upon the size. A cake of copper, and it was just poured in this giant mold. And then those cakes would be sent out for further refining and turned into wire that lighted America, wire that would go and be turned into plumbing or roofing or wiring that would go through America. Amazing town, amazing look back at America's past. The single tallest structure in the state of Nevada until very recently was the smokestack that was here in McGill that was blown down. There's some potential hazards of that, and so they blew that smokestack down. And the single largest building in the state of Nevada until very recently was the smelter building that was located just east of town as well. If this was the great salad bar, and I have no reason to doubt that Mr. Elliott was right, then we had some extraordinary ethnic backgrounds here. White Pine County held one of the largest Greek festivals in America, primarily because of the town of McGill. We had the second highest number of Greek immigrants per capita in McGill, Nevada. Only Chicago had more than we had.
And besides Greek, you would have?
You had Slovakians, you had Serbians, Croatians, you had Anglo-Saxons, you had Hispanics, you had Japanese people. Pretty much the whole gamut was all here.
All working here at the smelter.
All working here to produce copper for America. And so this was a great place to live, great place to produce copper, high-paying jobs, very stable families lived here, and to this day still do. Many of those families have just stayed on and hung on here and still continue to live here.
All right, terrific. Well, I think what we should do now is head back to the museum and find out what you've got in that incredible complex.
Very good.
There.
We'll show you what you can see there.
So coming up next, the East Ely Depot Museum.